Well, here it is. Time for an episode of the Backpack Show. And I am so amazed that I get to work with you today. I get to be here with you. It's a solo show. I'd like to say hello to my biological father and his wife. Hello, mom and dad. Good to see you. Welcome to the Backpack Show. We're going to cover whatever's on your minds, but also I've got some thoughts in mind. And one part of it is that we are going to talk a little bit about leadership. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of a technology conversation, and we're going to talk about Taylor Swift, because why not?
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show. Chloe Forbes, Kindling as I live and breathe. How are you? I was just reading up a little bit about the Taylor Swift concerts and the fact that Taylor Swift is now pulling in $10 million a night. The scalping prices are through the roof. It's incredible. The shows sell out in just seconds or minutes on Ticketmaster. And what they're asking in one article I saw was, is Taylor Swift the new Grateful Dead? I'm going to have to doubt on that one, but I'm not a Grateful Dead fan or a Taylor Swift fan, so what do I know? Well, that's not true. I like a couple of her songs. But I thought that was interesting. Hey, I'm solo today, so I am going to live and breathe on your comments. So if you are here and just sort of dropping in, it's time to leave comments so that I can interact with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership. One of the topics that I always like to talk about, especially at work, is I like to talk about leadership at all levels. And what I mean by that is that in inside organizations, there's a bunch of different ways to build your teams. And the way that we tend to look at it, I just realized I left my drink somewhere else. Well, good thing I have coffee. One way to look at it is that you can build it such that you have leadership at every single level of the organization. So, for example, when you empower people to do more making decisions, if you tell people that you don't have to be in every meeting, if you give people a lot more leeway, you have a lot more opportunity to build better leadership all the way through. So, for instance, one thing I talk to my leaders about at the company where I get to serve is I say, do you have to be at that meeting? Does that meeting require your input in any particular way, or are people just briefing you? Maybe you could even schedule just a handful of briefing meetings instead of being in all the decision-making meetings. It's great to give your team the opportunity to decide and figure things out. It's great so that they can have the chance to take a look at what's going on and understand from their point of view without you sticking in. Hi, Leslie, by the way. So the question is, or the opportunity is, how do you give people the opportunity to lead? One way is to keep reminding them that they can make decisions. Let's talk about this from the other side. Maybe you are a person who has a leader and the leader isn't very good at letting go at those sorts of things. Depending on your relationship with that leader, you might be able to work some of this in the other direction. You could say to them, hey, I am really grateful that you're my supervisor. I think I can handle this particular project. I would love just some input here and there, but I would love to get the chance to run with it. I want to free you up to do the other stuff you've got to get done. That's kind of one of the key expressions you have to do to get people a little bit more excited to hand over the reins on that, is to say, I want to free you up for other stuff you've got to do. One of the challenges people forget about leaders is they mistake the thought that leaders just sitting around with nothing else going on. But a lot of times they have other objectives. They have other things they've got to get handled. And so what they're looking for their teams to do is pick up some of the work. Other times what's going on is that the leader doesn't exactly feel that you have exhibited your leadership so well yet. There's some ways to do this. There's some ways to kind of get them warmed up into it. One way is to work on small and definitive projects as part of your work. Depending on what kind of work you do, you might say, hey, I've got this project I'm going to take on that is this, this, and this, especially if the project is part of your main job. One thing people do, especially when people are kind of career-minded, is they tend to create projects. And the problem with that is that their projects are not exactly in line with all the other stuff that they've got to get done. So they find themselves working on those projects and not so much working on their primary roles. So that becomes a little challenge too. It's easier if you turn your day work into projects so that people can understand or kind of parse out a little better, because then you can tell your leader, I intend to do this. Does that work for you? Here are the deliverables I'm going to make. Does that work for you? Hi, Joanne. Good to see you. I think it's important to think about that, because a lot of times, work sort of has this flow to it where it just feels like it's just never ending. It's just always rolling in one direction. Chloe says, it's so interesting how the framing of a conversation can impact the outcome so much. Like your example, help me free your time up. Right. I feel that there's a lot of circumstances out there where when we get the opportunity to work with people, we fall into thinking about ourselves. We fall into thinking about, what do I got to do? What's my job? What's my responsibility? One way to get around some of that is to think about what I call co-creation. So what are we co-creating here? What do we have to get done? What are the larger stories that have to happen? No matter where you are in a company, you can start to understand your role and what's going to move it forward. So for instance, you could be in the marketing team. And so obviously more leads, more sales. You could be a software developer, and it might be software delivered on time, or if you're not in especially time bound, it can be looking for the highest value add software to release and that sort of a thing. There's always a way to look at it from a various role. Customer service. I worked in customer service a lot early on in my career at the phone company. For instance, my mom used to schedule me. She worked out of a different office, but she helped schedule the 2 centralized repair service bureaus for what used to be New England Telephone and then became part of NYNEX, which is now Verizon. And one of the projects that I used to do at that job, on my level, was I worked to build better experiences and better rapport with the kinds of people who called into me. And I tried to do it to model the way that we could deliver exceptional customer service, even when someone was going through a trouble like a phone outage or something like that. I thought that if I could model enough of that behavior, then other colleagues around me might see that there are other ways to do the job instead of just get them in and out in a minute and a half. Now, time mattered on those calls, but also customer satisfaction the first time around mattered too, because the more times people called back, even if your call handling time went up just a tiny bit, you could still deliver something better. So that's a model of sort of sitting at leadership thoughts, even when I was at the front line. I saw an interesting survey that says that there's a lot of customer service people who are feeling a big bit of pressure that they just don't have access to the information to do their job. And it's really strange. In a world where there's more and more computers, there's more and more concern about AI, there's more just general energy around people being able to do work collaboration, especially in the land of remote working. It's amazing how people feel that they don't have their hands on the information they need when they need it. And people's solution to this, for whatever reason, almost always makes people think about the fact that they need to build more software or buy new software or get this new thing. And a lot of times that's not exactly it. It's just that there's no process by which to go look for information. There's no process by which to store it in kind of a mutually beneficial place. And there is certainly nothing kind of sifting keywords to find the more interesting or more useful ways to work on stuff. So I find that interesting. I think that there's a lot of opportunity in that field. And I think that that's one of those places where artificial intelligence could help. I know we talk about AI a lot. I know you hear about it a lot. When I'm sifting through the news today for topics, I was like, oh my gosh, every 4th thing is about something to do with AI. But don't think about the hubbub for a minute. Just think about this idea of information where you need it or when you need it. It's amazing how many times we come up against a situation where we just don't have information available. Hello from Maine. That's Carrie, our co-host. Carrie in the comments. That's actually how she ended up becoming the co-host of the show. I loved her interaction so much in the comments. I said, you should be part of the show. And she said, sure. And then she didn't realize I meant she was going to co-host the show. Thank you, this shirt. I have no real ability to pick out shirts, but I'm always grateful when I get chosen things I could wear, and it's very nice. So thank you. I'm very lucky. So information where you need it, I think, is going to be an important part of business going forward. And there's so many opportunities for this on all sides. Us as the customer, think about how many times you go to something like, welcome to Maine, Carrie. Think about how many times as the customer, you go into a situation where like you contact, like, I don't know, your cable company, and the cable company asks you a whole bunch of questions, and how that information is never around. It's amazing to me how many times we get stuck in a circumstance where we just don't have access to something right at the time we need it, and then we have to go sift through a whole bunch of different parts of a website. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a piece of software kind of sifting up all the best guesses on what you might be needing to do, and that everything wasn't just static? I think this is going to change how websites are made. Google's already working on this. Google has obviously freaked out a little bit in the land of ChatGPT because they're like, wait a minute, everyone's used to sort of static pages. Oh no, what do we do in this kind of world? And they are doing some stuff about it. There's some new generative information out there now, wherein which Google is not only working on how it's going to work in the land of AI, but it's building AI information. So it's called like SGE, something generative experience. And it's worth looking into. It's launched as of, I think, today. And chat's going to change, and AI driven chat's going to change things. But now start thinking about this for your website, for your business, for what you're looking to do. What will the world look like when information just rolls up to where you are and what you need it to do? Biro from the company says, hey, Chris, love your thoughts on AI here. Keep them coming. Thank you so much, Biro. Carrie says, thanks, Leslie. It's gorgeous here. And hello, Chloe, in the comments. Oh, everybody's in the comments. Oh, you know what? Because I did not have my illustrious and very smart co-host here today, I forgot to tell you a couple things. We're sponsored by StreamYard. Yes, that's right. You can make a show just like this yourself. You just have to get a duck and you can run a show. Carrie actually recommended this software years ago. I was using Ecamm Live, and she said, you might try StreamYard. Ecamm Live is made in the town where I'm sitting right now, and I know the brothers who put it together, and I still defected. cbrogan.net/StreamYard. You can get it. Also, do you want your own .online domain? You can get one pretty easy. Go to cbrogan.net/online. Use the code Chris. Type it however you want. Carrie's not even here to correct it. So, yeah. So in a world where information can just suddenly pop itself up however you want it, it gets kind of interesting kind of quickly. It's interesting to note that the world will soon have non-static interfaces everywhere. Non-static meaning like, when you go to touch it, you used to expecting buttons in a certain place. It will be weird for a while for things to move around differently when you're not expecting it. But ultimately, it should be better because it should be intuitive to what you're looking to do. If you're reaching to open a door, if the door knows you're reaching to open it, maybe it'll start doing biometric reading. If you are getting in your car and getting set up, the first thing it might do is it might take a bunch of information about what you do in your car. It might throw your GPS up fast. It might get your music started right away. It would know what your music was, right? So interactive location-based data is going to be a really interesting part of how things go. How does that tie to leadership? Well, think about back way out of the AI part of the storyline. What is leadership about? Leadership is about equipping your people to be able to do the kind of work that they want to do. Super important. Oh, so now there's a debate going on because Biro says, we're not friends. I use Restream and they are true enemies with StreamYard. Well, that's interesting. Steve says, how do you use Restream and how do you like Restream in comparison? One thing I like so far about StreamYard is that it has a lot of technology to make it so that I can run the show in lots of different ways. A little harder to show that off today when I'm doing solo. I don't usually queue up videos or anything like that, but usually we do kind of different camera angles and different things, so it's a deal. Carrie points out in the comments, you have to enter the code Chris in all caps to get the discount because reasons. cbrogan.net/online. So back to leadership as it relates to the conversation. My whole idea was just that you can take the information of bringing information where people need it and apply it to being a leader. And also think about this the other way. If you are an employee, or even if you're somebody who runs a consulting type business, bringing information to people is a great way to be helpful as well. Bureau says he likes Restream because they bundle a ton of features and support is super responsive. Yeah, it's always good to have responsive support, especially if they have a lot of problems that they need to fix.
Oh, boom shakalaka! Yellow card, Brogan. And Brogan is going down like a bag of hammers tonight.
Haha, I've got features too. Watch this. There you go. That's 2 features. All right. But enough about Restream. We're ruining Brogan's sponsorship here. They don't care. They're not threatened. All right. So that's 2 of my topics. Also, remember, I did open the show up. You do have the opportunity to suggest or ask questions, bring something to me. In the meantime, some interesting things are changing out in the retail world. One is that it turns out that usually people like to blame the millennials for everything. Millennials aren't buying houses. Millennials aren't doing X, Y. Well, now Gen Z is leading the decline in subscription renewals. Suddenly people are subscribing to fewer and fewer streaming services. I like that they're blaming it on Gen Z in these articles, but what they're not doing is saying maybe they just don't have any good streaming. Maybe there's just not enough interesting content and media. Maybe people don't need millions and millions of it. I'll take care of it is music to a boss's ears, unless the boss is a micromanager. No, yeah, absolutely. It's there's nothing like being able to fill in and just say, hey, I've got this handled for you. And it's amazing how people respond to the opportunity to work on their own stuff instead of have to worry about that you got your stuff done. It's amazing too if you can set up a culture where you don't have someone double checking you all the time because you've communicated enough times. I've got this, I've done this, I'm working on this. It's going to be a couple extra days or whatnot. Every now and again, I can see even in my interactions with people, if they're coming back and asking me questions, that means that I haven't been reporting enough. Because if I report enough, they won't ask me anything. They'll just be kind of waiting until my deliverable is delivered. So that's important as well. Again, this is open. You can ask any questions you want. In the meantime, I'm going to grab up just another little bit more news. And it's interesting. One of the things that I had looked at today was that JP Morgan has announced their AI project, which is that they're going to do some deep AI diving when it comes to financial data, just like Bloomberg did. So Bloomberg came up with Bloomberg GPT, and it looks like there's going to be a related project going on in the land of JP Morgan Chase. I almost forgot who they were. Gen Z is concerned with getting things done. I totally believe that. And Joanne says, we've seen the quality of streaming content decline. They just got used to everybody being stuck at home. No, I think that's right. I've been having that experience a lot, even like looking through something like Netflix, feeling it a bit more like a chore. Again, another area where AI would be great because I think Netflix's recommendation has nothing to do with what I really like. I think it has everything to do with what they really wish I would like, and it doesn't really work out. Leslie says, well, you would never watch every single cable channel and that was on, and so that kind of applies for streaming. Who has that kind of time? No, for sure. And it's, you know, when you see companies try to put even extra content out there because they're just running out of stuff to cover, this gets interesting because it gets to the point of why something like YouTube is interesting. It gets to the point that you can go on YouTube. Okay, I wonder if I could find this pretty quickly. Give me one quick second. I'm gonna look something up for you because there was a question on Reddit yesterday, and it was okay. There it is. Hang on a minute. It was a question of what's something really cool on YouTube that you can watch that people, don't know about yet or whatever. Okay, here we go. So this is I'm going to put a link up to it in one quick second. There's a company group called Defunct Company Group. There's a YouTube channel called Defunct Land. And I'm going to show you the thing really quick. Share screen. Douche. So see here. This
How
is
much do you know about lines? A line, or a queue, is an organized group of people, or in this case dots, waiting their turn for some thing.
This Defunct Land is a almost 2-hour video about Disney's Fast Pass, which has 17 million views. 17 million views of a nearly 2-hour video explaining Disney's Fast Pass. Think about that compared to the fact we can't find something to watch on streaming. Carrie says, I'm sure Gen Z would be open to some home ownership if it wasn't so insanely expensive. They're smart not to shackle themselves with debt. Curation and customization easily done with machine learning, for sure. Leslie says, my daughter and her boyfriend were recently house shopping, and insane is an understatement. Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. So it's interesting that entertainment really can have so many different new faces. And it's not what my generation thought. It's not what Gen X thought. We thought we were just going to make our own shows, and we were going to make our shows look just like the shows that were already on TV. And so we tried. And then what happened instead was that there's all kinds of opportunities to make interesting content about something really niche, and people will watch it. 17 million views on a show talking about Disney Fast Pass. What are we going to say about that? Well, and people come here to the Backpack Show. Why? Because partly they like to talk to each other, partly they like to talk to me. Often we have an interesting guest that shows something about success insights from unusual places. You know, we've been very lucky. It's been a good run. If it takes 2 hours to explain it, you might as well just wait in the line. Joanne says, changes to FastPass have made Disney fans really pissed off. Yeah, no, for sure. And I imagine that's part of it too, is that an entity like Disney, which has so many people feeling so excited about a feature that they can come to trust, I'm sure that there's a lot of people coming on there and voicing their opinions. And it's pretty easy to get frustrated in a world where everything just feels a little less like what it used to be. You know, it just seems a little less everything in a lot of ways, doesn't it? So there you go. It goes back to our leadership thing. One way to make leaders feel better is to give them a little more than they were expecting, not a little bit less. Well, I've had some fun making a show for you today. Let me click this.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
Gonna go with Leslie. I was really, really tempted to give it to Carrie in the comments, but I don't even know if she's still here. She might still be here. Leslie, you get it today. You are person of the day. So glad you were here. What am I going to add to the backpack today? I think what I'll add to the backpack today is my grandmother. She was French Canadian. She spoke 2 languages, except that she did a little funny trick around us all the time. She would say a lot of things in English and then all of a sudden switch to French only when